In his The Book of Werewolves, the Reverend Sabine Baring-Gould shared the following story. At the beginning of the 15th century, there lived in Baghdad an aged merchant who had an only son, Hussein. He resolved to marry him to the daughter of another merchant, a girl of considerable fortune but extremely poor in appearance. Hussein, on being shown a portrait of the lady, pleaded instead to marry another girl, Nadilla, the daughter of a sage, and Hussein gave his father no peace till he consented to this strange and, as it turned out, unholy union. For Nadilla turned out to be a corpse-eating ghoul who attempted to murder Hussein and drink his blood until he was forced to kill her and burn her body to ashes, which he then scattered into the Tigris. But here is the rest of the story. Hussein's nerves were so shattered by his experience, he went on an extended journey in order to recover and did not return to Baghdad until an entire year had passed, when he was finally willing to accede to his father's wishes. At least he would be rich. Fatima, for such was the name of the girl with the considerable fortune, expressed herself delighted at the prospect of marriage with Hussein. Hussein had to concede that perhaps he had been somewhat harsh in his assessment of her appearance. She was somewhat attractive, if a little swarthy. So why had he rejected her before? The eyebrows. It must have been the eyebrows. Yes, that was it. They were thick and dark and formed a single band, a solid black line above her dark eyes. Yes, those eyebrows were rather disconcerting. Still, at least he would be rich. And so Hussein resigned himself to marriage with Fatima, and whenever he suffered any qualms or had second thoughts, he reminded himself as to the bride's substantial dowry. After all, somebody had to do it. Eventually, like all things both good and bad, the happy day arrived and the marriage executed. A ripe, full yellow moon hung over Baghdad as Hussein made his way through the darkened corridors to the nuptial chamber. Fatima lay in shadow, reclining on a low divan in an obscure corner. In fact, she was hard to see in the relative gloom. "I have come," Hussein whispered softly, adding, for good measure, "my beloved." By way of response, Fatima moaned gently. At least, that was what Hussein thought the sound must have been, although it did sound strangely like a growl. And as Hussein stepped forward towards his bride, he became aware that the chamber was filled with a strong and pungent perfume, a scent so strong as to be almost offensive. Indeed, there was something feral about it, something that made him think instinctively of Nadilla. Nadilla? But still, it was his wedding night, so Hussein moved forward and, sitting on the edge of the divan, took Fatima's hand and screamed. For he held not the hand of a woman, but a hairy paw, the paw of a dog, or a hyena, or a wolf, with long, sharp claws. Claws! Staring in wide-eyed bewilderment, Hussein saw that Fatima was staring back at him with eyes that glowed red in the darkness. And as he listened in terror, Hussein heard a low panting sound which did end in growling. They sat there, alone, in the darkness, when Hussein could no longer stand the suspense, and reached out a pair of trembling hands and drew aside the veil that shrouded Fatima's face. He had a momentary impression of a long, dark snout, rows of sharp and shining teeth, a long red tongue, pointed ears, and then Fatima tore out his throat. In his The Book of Werewolves, the Reverend Sabine Baring-Gould says the vampire and the werewolf are closely related, as is the werewolf and the ghoul. You know, in spite of what happened, I think Fatima really loved Hussein. In fact, she wanted to eat him up. If this is your first visit to my channel, please consider subscribing. My name is Warren, and I write and tell original ghost stories and original horror stories featuring such cryptids as the Night Floaters, Werewolves, and the Black-Eyed Children. So again, please consider subscribing. Please help me to reach my goal of 2,021 subs in 2021. Till midnight. Cheers. Pictures used in today's presentation, courtesy of Pix Here, that's PX Here, while the music was the haunting Ghost Processional by that patron of the internet, Kevin MacLeod.